And I thought I'd start my presentation with a survey of the crowd. This is a room full of farmers. There's about, say, 60 something farmers there. And I started by asking, who here makes most of their farming income growing seed? And one farmer, maybe two, put their hands up. And then I said, okay, who here saves seed from their farm to replant every single season? And literally everybody else put their hand up. So I don't even think people talk about their seed saving, but I think that most market farmers that I know save some seed. They don't think they're doing a good job of it, but I bet they are.
Welcome to episode 41 of the Seed Farmer Podcast. The podcast where I want you to harvest seeds from some of the vegetables and flowers growing in your farm or garden, and then to plant that seed out to grow delicious vegetables and beautiful flowers. I'm your host, Dan Brisebois, seed grower at Tournesol Cooperative Farm and author of The Seed Farmer, a complete guide to growing, using, and selling your own seeds. Today, we have another seedy interview. But first, news. The Seed Farmer Mentorship is open for registration. The Seed Farmer Mentorship is a guided learning experience designed to help you build the skills, system, and confidence to grow, harvest clean, and distribute high-quality seed from your farm. This mentorship is aimed at all types of seed growers. Whether you're new to seed and are just trying to get your head wrapped around what the possibilities are and what you should know, or whether you've been doing this for quite a while and want to hone your systems and have better record-keeping techniques, and also just to get new pointers. If you fit in any of those categories, the Seed Farmer Mentorship, I think, is a great fit for you. This is the second time I'm running the program, and I'm really excited to welcome a new group of seed growers to take the next step on their seed journey. One of the parts of the mentorship that I really love is the spreadsheets. And maybe Seed Farmer Mentorship doesn't evoke the word spreadsheets to you. And for sure, there's a lot of things that are not spreadsheets. But there's two spreadsheets that I want to tell you about. One of the spreadsheets is a harvest and cleaning record keeping system where you can keep track of the crops that you've harvested, how much weight you've harvested, and how long it took to process it from harvest and post-harvest, so that you can analyze those crops and get some economic indicators to see how profitable the crop is, how crops compare to each other. If that's the kind of thing that you're looking for, if you're not interested in the economic part of it, these sheets still give you a really good idea of the yield that you've harvested per area, and they give you tools that are going to help you when you crop plan for future seed crops. So that's the first spreadsheet, the harvest and cleaning record keeping sheets. The other spreadsheet is an inventory management spreadsheet. So with these spreadsheets, you receive the seed lots that you're going to work with, and they might be from your farm. So they might be coming out of your harvest and record cleaning system into this, or maybe you buy them in. Maybe somebody else grows them for you. Maybe you trade. I don't know how you do it, but you get the seeds and then you receive them in these sheets, and then you're able to keep track of germ tests to see how viable your seed is, and you can keep track of multiple germ tests, so you can look at an evolution over time of the germ tests or the viability of the crop. These sheets also let you keep track of how much inventory you still have after you pack seed out, so you can get a snapshot of all your seed lots together and what's left, and this can help you out, I guess, part of a sales plan and your crop plan, and can help you figure out what you need to grow in the future. So that is the inventory management spreadsheet. So the spreadsheets are two of the things that I particularly love in the mentorship. There's many other things too, but those are things that me, who also runs the Farmer Spreadsheet Academy, definitely have on my mind. So those are a couple of things I wanted to tell you about the mentorship right now. If you have any questions, please feel free to email them to me, or you can send me a DM on Instagram. Email's a little bit better. The DM, I will get back to you, but it might take a couple extra days. In other news, there's a few new seed podcast episodes that are out. Seed Heads has a new episode. This episode is with Latifa Peltier Ahmed from ALCLA Native Plants, one of Canada's few nurseries dedicated entirely to native species. And then there's also a new Seeds and Their People episode, episode 36, Preserving Seeds, Cultures, and Farming Traditions of Batir, Palestine. They're both great episodes, and I'm sure you'll enjoy them if you like seedy things. And I'm pretty sure you can find them wherever you get your podcasts. So go out and listen to those. And if you have any seedy news that you want me to share, please send it my way. And now, let's get into today's conversation. David Catzel is this episode's guest. David is the BC Seed Security Program Manager at FarmFolk City Folk. He's the Regional Program Coordinator for the Bauta Family Initiative on Canadian Seed Security, and he serves on the board of the BC EcoSeed Co-op. David also grows seed at Fraser Common Farm Co-op. In this episode, David shares his experience supporting growers, organizing cooperatives, and stewarding seed networks. We talk about on-farm plant breeding, including David's efforts to select an open-pollinated white peacock kale. In the deep dive, Dave and I get into the nitty-gritty of growing sea kale. We cover its tricky germination, perennial habits, and seed production. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hi, David. Welcome to the Seed Farmer Podcast.
Hi, Dan. It's great to be here.
You've had a lot of different seed hats over the years. Why don't you tell us kind of where your seed story starts and where you are now?
Okay. My seed story started, I guess, when my farming story started. I think my farming story started because I was really exploring the idea of living in this world without needing the security of a bank account and trying to figure out what it means to be self-sufficient and learn how to feed yourself. And I was exploring that through various apprenticeships, and I did woofing for a while. And I was starting to understand that, I'm a first generation farmer. Nobody in my family farmed. None of my parents, grandparents, great grandparents, or even grew a garden. So it was all a very new discovery for me. And I was starting to understand how the sustainability works in terms of soil health and perpetuating that soil health and perpetuating plants. But I didn't really figure out the seed part until I was woofing at somebody's place on Galliano Island, and they were saving seeds from their flowers, and my brain just exploded. It was such an obvious it was such an obvious thing all of a sudden. Like, of course, flowers eventually make seed. Eventually, everything that makes a flower makes a seed, and all you need to do is collect it from the plant, and then you have it for next year. And I know that it seems so silly for me to say that right now, because it was like a mind-blowing realization that that's how it works, and it was actually that simple. So that's when my seed growing started, I'd say.
And that lines up really well if you're trying to figure out how to live without a bank account. Here's one way to get part of the inputs of what makes growing vegetables or flowers possible.
It was the missing input. I'm like, if you have to buy seed every year, then how do you possibly live without a bank account? And so, yeah, it was that one missing piece that suddenly kind of came really full circle all of a sudden for me.
So what are you doing now in the seed world?
So now I do a little bit of everything in the seed world. I mean, I work with FarmFolk City Folk, helping manage the BC Seed Security Program, with an amazing team of people around the province who are equally passionate about seed production. I am also the provincial rep of Bauta Family Initiative on Canadian seed security. It's same, equally amazing, passionate people around about seed across Canada. I grow seeds for myself. I grow seeds for BC EcoSeed Co-op, who I've been involved with for quite some time. It was started as an initiative of FarmFolk City Folk and is now its own entity. But that's a collection of over 20. I can't remember what we're up to now. I think close to 25 seed growing members. So I work with them and just all things seed, really.
So it sounds like there is a actual physical seedy part to it. It's not just office work that you're doing at this point of your career.
That's true. Yeah. So I spent about 20 years as a market farmer. We always grew some seed, or I always grew some seed during that time. And about 5 years ago, I shifted. I left that co-op. It was Glorious Organics Co-op that still runs on the same farm that I live at. So we're engaged with each other, but not in the same way. I left that co-op and I took this job working for FarmFolk City Folk, uh, at helping run the BC Seed Security Program. The only reason I even decided to take the job is because it still came with the ability to have my hands in the soil and grow seeds. So yeah, I still do that, and I do that at the farm I live at. We have a small hub site here, so some of the growing is related to our programs at FarmFolk City Folks. So I help like replicate seed variety trials. I sometimes cross some plants and start new breeding projects to share out with farmers. I've trialed other farmers' breeding projects, and then we also grow seed and sell it through BC EcoSeed Co-op. So I do grow seed here as well for sale through them.
Something I should have asked you before we started: is there anything specific you want to talk about in this conversation? Like, do you have a secret agenda being here?
I don't actually have a secret agenda. I quite the opposite. I like all seed stuff to be open source and publicly available, and maybe that's my secret agenda is that I don't believe in hoarding seeds or hoarding new varieties or anything like that. I like to just get them out there. So I don't really have a secret agenda. I will say I'm equally excited, and it's always a stressful time coming up to a big event, but we do have a seed gathering that happens every 2 years that's going to be run in a month from now.
So that's on, is it November 28th? Do I have the date right in my head?
It is, yeah, it's November 28th. It overlaps with the Organic BC gathering. We are working with them, and there's a few seed related sessions that happen the day before on the November 27th. And then we have a farm tour later that day that's seed focused at Cedar Isle Farm. And then we have a full day of sessions following that on the 28th.
And so this episode is going to come out in a couple of weeks from when we're having this conversation. You've told me that it's possible at that point that there's no more tickets to go to the event.
It might be possible. I mean, probably similar to probably a lot of our growing styles, there's always room for another row of something in there. So if you hear this and you really want to come, please do reach out.
And probably act sooner than later. Don't wait until the 27th.
Definitely that, yeah.
Do you want to tell a little bit about what kind of sessions will be at this event?
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about the sessions. For me, going to events like this or being at events like this, the most exciting thing about it are the conversations that happen in the hallways and between sessions. Not that I don't think our sessions are amazing, but you're in rooms full of equally passionate seed growers, and there's so much we learn from one another. So I think what I'd say is this gathering in the past we've had somewhat high profiled seed people. We had Rowan White at our last gathering, and it was amazing to have her. We've had some really great speakers and sort of keynotes that anchored the event. And this time I'm just actually really excited about all the the people coming and the conversations that happen in between. But we do have sessions, some that are a bit more. We always have some that are specific to like a bit more detail and nuance around seed growing. We have a great presentation from the folks who run the Canovi, which is the Canadian Organic Vegetable Improvement Project, and they're going to be talking about some of the nuances of like sourcing genetic material for carrots from different places around the world, land races, to bring in genes that might be more resilient to drought and climate change, all the way down to sessions of people who are passionate about, community seed stewardship and running seed libraries and that real community base of seeds and not so much the technical aspects.
One thing that I've noticed as an outsider looking into the BC seed world is there's a lot of seed growers in BC. Like, we have a bunch in Quebec and Eastern Canada, but it feels like there's just so many more in BC. And I don't know if that's a climate thing. Is my perception right when I say that?
Uh, I'm glad I hear that from you, because sometimes we're in our whole little bubble, and I've thought maybe that's the case, but I'm only in my own little bubble. So I'm like, are there seed companies popping up all over the place? So I've worked with the BC Seed Security Program and FarmFolk for the last 5 years, but I've been involved with them for longer than that. So I've watched the seed program kind of start and bloom. I've watched BC EcoSeed start with 4, seed producers, and now we're up to 25 seed producers. When I first got into seed growing with Glorious Organics, and when, we were one of the early members of BC EcoSeed Co-op, I remember noticing like, oh, there's some new seed companies starting. And I mean, there was maybe 3 of them that I can think of at that time. And the impetus for BC EcoSeed Co-op to start at that time was that we saw these great seed companies starting, but they were only selling packets to market gardeners, and we really wanted a seed company that offered bulk amounts to farmers. So we started pushing for that, and I think that part of that process maybe got people more excited about seeds, because I've definitely seen a lot more seed companies popping up recently. I do think that the climate has something to do with it as well. We are, ideally uh, placed climate-wise for seed production. We have fairly like moist, wet springs, and then we have a drier fall, quite a long season. And then there's also lots of little microclimates. So, people in the interior can grow amazing like peppers and tomatoes, and we have the ability to grow brassicas fairly well in some of the eastern climates. It gets a bit hot in the summer, I think, for good seed production. Similarly with carrots, we have good carrot production here. So yeah, I think a mixture of climate and concentration of passionate seed nerds.
How common or uncommon is it for market growers to grow any of their own seed in BC?
It was part of one of my goals in this job, has always been to encourage more market growers to grow seed. Certainly to encourage more market growers to consider moving away from growing hybrids and growing OPs, which would contribute much more positively to public and sustainable seed system. But I've always, hoped that market growers do grow seed. I was a few years ago, I was actually at an Organic BC conference doing a presentation, and I thought I'd start my presentation with a survey of the crowd. This is a room full of farmers. There's about, say, 60 something farmers there. And I started by asking, who here makes most of their farming income growing seed? And one farmer, maybe 2, maybe one was hesitant, put their hands up. And then I said, okay, who here saves seed from their farm to replant every single season? And literally everybody else put their hand up. So I don't even think people talk about their seed saving, but I think that most market farmers that I know save some seed. They don't think they're doing a good job of it, but I bet they are, especially if they're reusing their seed. So
And I guess that's a little bit when I was saying that it seems in BC there is a lot of seed being grown. I was thinking also from that perspective, because I don't know if it's as common in Quebec or Ontario for a market grower to be growing some seed. Definitely some people do. But I just had that impression a little bit more common in BC, and I guess trying to figure out how to ignite that spark to make it more people
I,
do it out here.
I mean, I think that, like I say, BC EcoSeed Co-op was originally a project our FarmFolk City Folk, and we have very similar missions, including the same mission as the Bauta, Bauta Family Initiative on Canadian Seed Security, which is to increase the quality and quantity and diversity of seed grown.
Can you just take a moment to tell people about Bauta? Because you've mentioned them a couple times, but not everybody's familiar with the organization or the project, I should say.
Yeah, so the Bauta project is basically the Canadian seed project that's run by Seed Change. Seed Change used to be USC Canada. It's one of Canada's oldest charitable organizations. They do a lot of seed work all across the world, and their model is not to parachute into any community in different countries and tell people what they should be doing, but working directly with the people that do the work. So directly with farmers and organizations that work with farmers. And Bauta is sort of modeled after that. So it's the Canadian version of that program. So Bauta is a seed security program that runs across Canada, and we have a number of different initiatives. There's a coordinator in pretty much every province, and sometimes the coordinators are employees of Seed Change and run the project that way, and sometimes the coordinators are associated with another organization, which in my case, I'm associated with FarmFolk City Folk. FarmFolk City Folk seed program actually started about 6 years before Bauta's did. So yeah, we've sort of we have overlapping partnership. And yeah, Bauta is like a seed security program for all of Canada.
Thank you. So now, before I interrupted you, you were talking about. I don't know if you're making. I don't know if you're making the point sort of about Bauta's work and BC EcoSeeds Co-op and market growers.
Yeah, so I think that because I think what I was saying is that FarmFolk City Folk had this goal, and Bauta had this goal of increasing the quality, quantity, and diversity of seed in BC and in Canada. And BC EcoSeed Co-op, which started, like I say, as a project of FarmFolk City Folk, was an amazing vehicle to pull in market growers and engage them in seed production in a bit more serious way than, those 59 farmers that put up their hand that said, yes, I grow seed every year and save it on my farm. They grow seed every year, they save it on their farm, they probably grow way more than they need. And I'm saying this from experience of being one of those farmers in the past, and not really having a market for it or anything to do with it. And you're doing it because you're either passionate just about farming and sustainability and seeds, or it's a variety that you maybe can't find somewhere else, which is when I worked with Glorious Organics, and they still do this, to this day. If there's a variety they're working with that suddenly is hard for them to find, or was hard for us to find, and we really liked it as a variety for our market production, we would make sure we saved that variety. Sometimes it was something like a cabbage. Back in the day, we were growing this Calabos cabbage, and it's available quite readily now. But at one point, it was like, oh, it's kind of hard to find, and so we decided to start saving the seed. Well, to save seed from a cabbage, you've got to put aside, 100 cabbage and not sell them. We would store them in our cooler all winter. Go in, pick off leaves, try to keep them surviving through the winter, and then bring them out in spring and take up another whole 100 feet of bed space to grow them out for seed. And then if you're not selling the seed, you've got, 30 years worth of cabbage seed for yourself that you're never going to use. And so I think that was probably and is happening a lot for market growers who do save some seed. And so I think because FarmFolk City Folks started this project, BC EcoSeed Co-op, and now they're kind of their own thing, we have a vehicle to use in British Columbia that it allows a market grower to not have to start their own seed company in order to sell seeds. Because as a market grower, that was the bottleneck for me. I wanted to run a seed company as well as all the other stuff I did, but it wouldn't have been, feasible to do that. And now there's a vehicle to do that.
I guess I should also ask you now to tell us a little bit more about the BC EcoSeeds Co-op, because we've gotten so much into it. Do you want to tell us? Can you tell us a little bit more? Is that is that an appropriate question to ask you?
Yeah, I'd say it is. It represents a lot of seed growers. A lot of the people that are part of BC EcoSeed Co-op also run their own seed companies. On the FarmFolk City Folk website, we do have a listing of BC seed companies, and there's more. There's more than just BC EcoSeed Co-op. So I'll definitely say that if you're looking for local seeds, you don't just have to go to BC EcoSeed Co-op. Go to our website, look up under our resources page where to find seeds, and there's a listing of all the seed growers that sell seed in BC. And these aren't seed companies that buy seeds on the international market and resell them in BC. These are seed growers that actually produce their own seed in BC. BC EcoSeed Co-op is one of those growers, one of those seed companies, and if you go on the BC EcoSeed Co-op website, you can look up your seed by the grower. So you can tell exactly who grew your seed. You can tell where the seed was grown. For the reason it's a good vehicle for market growers. So if you're a market grower right now in BC and you do grow seed and you're interested in not starting your own seed company, but maybe marketing some of the seeds that you have, it's a great vehicle because membership is fairly low cost. It's something you can join. You're part of a group of other farmers that are selling seed, and you can focus on just a couple seed varieties, do a good job of it, and it can become an income stream for your farm. So it's a great vehicle that kind of contributes to food security, seed security, and I guess economic security for farmers. I hesitate to say that because I was a farmer, and I'd say you make a great lifestyle as a farmer, and unfortunately they are all way underpaid still. So
Yeah, it's not the first time I've heard that. And Robin Tunnicliffe was on the podcast. I think it's episode 9, and talked a bit about BC EcoSeeds Co-op then too. So if somebody is hearing this and wants to hear more, they can go and listen to that episode and find out a bit more about that. So when I asked you what crop you'd want to talk shop about, do a little more of a deep dive into, you said that you didn't like to choose favorites. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your lack of favorites?
yeah, I've always struggled with that question. I don't have a favorite color. I don't, there's just a lot of, I don't really do favorites. I love growing all kinds of seeds. They're all so uniquely different. I mean, what I'd say is just because of our climate, I have spent a fair bit of time playing with brassicas, and I think what I'd say is one of my best seed teachers is a Brassica oleracea cross that I started in 2004. I still sell the seed on the BC EcoSeed Co-op website through FarmFolk City Folk. It's called White Winter Kale Sprout. It is a wacky, diverse, mixed cross between a bunch of kales and Brussels sprouts, and it's not a finished variety after 21 years.
Can you tell us how it started?
Yeah, yeah. How it started was me thinking I had saved seeds from Brussels sprouts. We grew a row of Brussels sprouts. We didn't really have a market for it. It wasn't a crop we normally grew, so we just weren't really up on the harvest cycle. And by the time it was ready, we weren't delivering food anymore. It was like late, weren't at that time doing a lot of food sales in it was probably late crop December or whatever. And I thought, well, we'll let it, go to seed, and I'll save seed from it. And so I did, and I saved seed from it. And shortly after I'd saved seed from it, I attended a workshop, a 2-day seed workshop that was put on by John Navaggio, who was an amazing seed steward. The seed community lost him a couple years ago. He was seed breeder for Johnny's, and just an amazing sharer of information. Anyway, I was at his workshop, and he was talking about, on the second day, he was talking about Brassica oleracea, and I suddenly realized I did not have Brussels sprout seed. I pictured the field that those Brussels sprouts were flowering in, and there was collards, there were kales, there were hybrid kales, or white peacock and purple peacock kales, which are, hybrids, probably with cytoplasmic male sterility genes in them, like just a weird mix of stuff. And so I realized, okay, I don't have Brussels sprouts. Like those are useless seed. And then the next question somebody had in the group, they said, "Do you think it's possible to breed an open pollinated white peacock kale?" And I knew that, like, this white peacock kale was a kale we used a lot for our salad mixes. It's it's not very tasty, but it does get sweeter over winter. It's very hardy. It's a hybrid, so it's very uniform, and it's beautiful in salad. So we grew it every year, and I always wanted to try to move away from it. So this person asked that question, and the response from John was, "If you can breed an open pollinated white peacock kale, you'll be a very rich man." And I thought, well, that's what I got into farming for. It was to get rich. So I think I should probably try that. I'm joking. That wasn't it.
Well, you've already told us you started off not wanting to have a wallet.
Yeah, yeah. I did. I mean, we all have to feed ourselves in this world, unfortunately, and pay rent. But anyway, that said, it was very intriguing to me to try to figure out how to produce a white peacock kale that I could reproduce myself and wouldn't have to rely on these hybrid seeds. So that's kind of how that project started. The next year, I took those not Brussels sprout seeds. I planted out 20 flats of them, 100 plants per flat. And in like the sort of maybe second true leaf stage as they were growing, I just culled out anything that didn't look like it might be a white peacock kale. And I whittled down those 2,000 plants down to about 100. And I planted them out and I saved seed. And I kind of, that's been, for the most part, that's what I've done sort of year after year. There was a couple years I played with saving separate parental lines and planting those out to try to reduce the diversity of the crop without sort of bottlenecking the genetics. And I'd say I've never been successful, so I've never become that rich person who developed an open pollinated white peacock kale. I think John Navaggio was right. It would be really hard to do that. So, but I'd say in the process, and your original question was like, do I have a favorite seed crop? It's my favorite, and it's also my nemesis because it's never been tameable, and I learn from it all the time. And this year, what I decided to do, I'm also not a great Brussels sprout grower. So sometimes as a seed grower, I need to see other people grow the crop to actually know how it's growing. So anyway, this year I decided I'm going to grow it and mix it in with a couple different kinds of Brussels sprouts and kind of restart this whole project over again. So I'm just going to continue it being my teacher. And so I'd say that's maybe one of my very long time close seed friends.
And you said that you've told me before we started that you're kind of moving into non-vegetable crops or non-common crops as an area of interest.
Yeah, I think it was when you asked me if I had a favorite seed, and I right now, like I said, I don't choose a favorite, and I'm moving towards even less so choosing one favorite because I haven't grown a lot of like flower seeds or medicinal plants. And through FarmFolk City Folk, the last couple of years, we've had this medicinal plant and seed project, and I've just been enjoying planting plants that are really hard to germinate. They don't come up when you hope they're going to come up. You'll plant, one of the crops was a leopard lily. We grew it from seed. You plant it out, you cold stratify it. So I planted it really early, like in January, and probably by March, one or two popped up, and then in April, another one popped up, and May, five more popped up, and June, a few more popped up, and I enjoyed the frustration maybe of it, and just like watching this plant that was like, no, I'm not tame yet. I'm just not a tame plant. We're so used to, as vegetable growers, you plant a flat of arugula and they're all ready to go at the same time really quickly.
Like 2 days later.
Yeah, and that can be satisfying, but I guess the satisfaction comes from 2 years later seeing this row of perennial leopard lilies flowering, and it took a lot of work to get there. It's somehow more satisfying than seeing all your bolting arugula like a month and a half later or whatever, a couple months later. So yeah, I've been enjoying that. One of the plants I've kind of been building up a bit of a bank in my sort of food garden is sea kale. It's not a maybe it's a brassica. It's not it's not related to most of the brassicas we grow. I can't remember the Latin name, Crimbe, something like that.
Let me just look up. So I think it is a brassica. So I'm not sure of the pronunciation, but Crambe maritima. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So it's a weird crop. It's like very in our climate, it's very winter hardy and very perennial, unlike some of the like perennial kales that are actually just biennials that live for more than 2 years. And yeah, it's an interesting crop, and again, I kinda like it because it's really hard to germinate. The seeds are kinda odd. I have a terrible luck germinating them, as I think most other people do, and it's taken me, like, 3 years to build up a 20-foot patch of the sea kale, and it was beautiful flowering last year. I finally started eating some of it, and yeah, I just think the satisfaction of growing these hard to germinate plants and then seeing the success eventually is being satisfying.
Well, can you describe the plant for us?
Yeah, it's like it's like a very tough leafed kale. I don't know if you do a lot of eating the leaves, but the sprouts I was in the spring I was eating them kind of like you would gailan, the sprouts of it. So it's a very early spring crop. People often used to it was one of these crops that they would force by throwing a big huge clay pot over them and have them sprouting up with lack of light, but when it makes flowers and seed, it's just this huge beautiful bloom of flowers, and the scent of them is beautiful. It's like white flowers. It has a really nice scent. I don't It just looks kind of wild to me, and it's a very produced a lot of seed. I'm really curious to see if I have better luck germinating the seeds that I saved this year than I have had, germinating other people's seeds in the past.
Did you start with different strains of it, or did you just find it from one place?
I ordered them wherever I could find them. There wasn't a lot, I what I will say is like maybe 20 years, more than 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I grew like three of these plants. Again, I planted a whole lot and three came up, and one of them grew in front of my window in Vancouver at a co-op I lived at, and it lived there for maybe it's still there. I'm not sure, but it came back every year for at least a decade. Yeah, so I had this one plant, it was always there just wasn't enough of it to like eat. So I'm looking forward to there being a big enough row that I can actually have it be part of my spring food source.
And so, since this is going to be the deep dive about a seed crop, do you want to tell us a little about the seeds? Because they don't look like normal brassica seeds.
Yeah, it's true. They look like small round little wooden beads. And I believe inside the wooden bead in this like very hard outer coat is the seed inside. And I've tried cutting them open and just planting the seed inside. I've tried starting them by pouring boiling water on them. These are often things, you might do to bring a hard to germinate seed out of dormancy. I imagine in like 10 years, I might have some information for you about the best way to germinate them. But when when we're farmers or seed growers, you get one shot at it each year. And it takes a long time to learn stuff. So I haven't figured it out yet. And I get maybe that's why I'm sort of infatuated by it right now, because it's pretty new to me. I haven't quite figured out how it all works. But yeah, really interesting seed. They look very light, because they are like a light outer, very wooden feeling seed coat, and then with a little seed inside.
And if I remember right, they're like the kind of like the size of your tip of your pinky.
Yeah, they're they're like berry, a decent sized berry size. They're not a small seed for sure. But again, the seed is inside that. Yeah, I guess it's all the seed, but there's an inner seed.
That woody husk on the outside is kind of the pod, I guess.
Just like, yeah, it's like the spray of flowers that becomes the spray of seeds.
Yeah.
So you're not shelling, it's not, again, not like a brassica where you have a long pod and the seeds are inside. It's like the seeds, and maybe that's why they're so hard to germinate, is this seeds on this like spray of seeds are inside. They, in some ways, maybe each seed is its own pod.
Are you letting them just dry completely down on the plant and then cutting off the stalks?
Yeah. I did go in, I picked some that maybe were a little less mature, but I always try to let, seeds dry down as fully as I can on the plant. I mean, one thing I like about them, some of the plants I find it challenging to work with in our climate are the ones that are like becoming mature right at the end of the year when it might rain on them, and then you might lose your whole seed crop. You're biting your nails, like an allium crop. You've saved your allium tubers from the year before. You looked at them all winter wishing you could eat them because you're running out of onions in your house, but you got to save them to replant, and then you replant them, and then you get an early rain at the middle of September, and you ruin your seed crop if you don't have them growing under cover. So these ones are nice and early. They produce seed in the very dry period of August. And yeah, so I definitely let them dry down on the plant, and I did just sort of gather them all at once. So there were maybe some a little less dried down than others, but yeah.
Have you noticed any diversity in the plants that you're seeing?
Not a ton yet, and like I say, I'm still fairly early on in working with them, so there's definitely difference in size. I'll probably have a better idea next year, next spring. As I say, it's taken like 3 years to build up a 20-foot patch of these things. So I've definitely seen, again, diversity in when the seeds germinate. And I mean, it makes sense for wild plants to have some built-in dormancy and be able to germinate over a long period of time. I picture these things, growing on the side of the ocean, having to drop their seeds and needing to perpetuate themselves, and that's harsh climate. You don't want to germinate and then get killed by winter right away. So it's good to stagger your germination, and I imagine there's some plan out there.
If I recall, I think you can actually propagate it vegetatively, which might be a way if you do want to increase the quantity of plants, but not the diversity of the population. They're going to be clones, but they won't. But that could be another way to do it.
Yeah. I'm determined to just keep planting the seeds, and especially figuring out if there is a way to become a bit more consistent with their germination. So I'll try a few things this year. I might try a bit more like cold stratification or something.
So why don't we switch into kind of the wrap-up questions?
Okay.
What would you tell your younger seed-growing self?
That's a really tricky question because I don't really remember, I think, my younger seed growing self that much. But I guess what I would say is, when I was working as a market gardener and always growing some seeds and seeing a few seed companies pop up, and at one point even we were like, let's also start a seed company. I would have told myself, and I think we even did. I think one year we even saved a few varieties and we packaged them, and we were going to bring them to the farmers market and sell them. And I think I would have told myself, stick with that and keep doing it and just start a seed company, even if it's the part of your business that kind of breaks even and isn't that successful. Maybe it could have been over the longer term. And like you say, there's so many more seed growers in BC now, but had my younger self just stuck with it and started a seed company, then uh, maybe I would be one of those seed, people that have a seed company. Not that I already feel very part of the whole seed community, so I don't really feel like I missed out by doing that, but I kind of wish I had taken it a bit more seriously. Yeah.
And what would you say to market growers to inspire them to start growing seed?
Well, I mean, I guess as I mentioned before, I think they already are. I think so many of them already are. Even if it's one or two varieties, I think they're doing it. Even if they say they're not, I believe they're growing seeds secretly and they just don't even want to admit it because they don't think they're doing a good job of it. And I would probably tell them a similar thing that, to what I would tell my younger self is take it seriously. And even if you don't want to like market it or, or start a seed company on the side or have it be part of something you're doing. I mean, often I tell them, consider connecting with something like BC EcoSeed Co-op or find another seed company that you could contract with and make some of your, farm income from producing seed. But I think the reason I'd like to encourage them to do that and what I would encourage them to do is choose some varieties they're passionate about and think of themselves as long-term stewards of that variety. So rather than just saving the odd seed every year, get really good at saving certain seeds that you're passionate about that you want to see perpetuated over time. Maybe it's a variety that you have in your family or a variety that you can't find elsewhere, and do a good job of doing that and share the seeds with others. Like make sure other people are also that there's another venue for them to be perpetuated as well. But I think that's what I'd share. I'd try to encourage them is to take the seeds that are already growing and try to think of themselves as stewards. If they're not growing seeds already, I'd probably tell them to start listening to like nerdy seed podcasts like yours and get inspired. And I find it hard to believe they wouldn't get into start becoming interested in growing seed. It gets you.
I love that endorsement. Is there something that I should have asked you that I didn't?
I can't think of something that you should have asked me, actually, Dan. I was trying to think of this. I'm like trying to anticipate what you would be asking me and come up with something that you should have asked me. But I I think you shared with me that you had a podcast with Frank Morton, who's an amazing person to listen to, and it ended up being two podcasts. And I think what I would say is there's so many more things that you could ask around seed saving and seed production and passion about seed growing that you're never going to be able to fit it in one or even two or three or a whole lot of seed episodes. So there's an endless stream of questions you could ask about seeds.
All right. Well, how can people find out more about what you're doing?
Well, right now, most of the stuff I'm doing is part of FarmFolk City Folk, so I would suggest going to our farmfolkcityfolk.ca webpage, and under the What We Do section, there's the BC Seed Security Program, and that can connect you with a slew of different programs and ways to get involved, whether you're a farmer or a market gardener or just a backyard grower or even somebody who just likes eating food. There's lots of ways to get involved.
And I'll put the links that you share with me in the show notes so folks can click through there to get to that place, those places.
Great.
So thanks, David, for the conversation.
Okay, yeah, thanks. It was great. It's always great to chat seeds, for sure.
Have a great end of your season.
Okay, you too, Dan.
And that's episode 41 of the Seed Farmer Podcast. Thank you, David, for being on the podcast. I hope you have a blast at the BC Seeds Gathering. Thank you to Sophia Sedelton for the theme music. You can hear more of their music at sophiasedelton.com. Thank you to Molly Brisebois for editing this episode, and thank you so much for joining me in these conversations with seed farmers. You can find out more about the Seed Farmer Mentorship at spreadsheet.farm/mentorship. I'd love to see you in the mentorship if it's a good fit for you. If you haven't already subscribed to this podcast, now's the time. You wouldn't want to miss the next episode. Until then, happy farming.